Good evening. This episode is called First Date. And before I get into it, uh, I just want to say that I've got some feedback from family and friends on the first video, and even a few strangers. And it's been extremely meaningful to me. So thank you for that. I'd also like to say that I am actively learning how to step up my game to make anything I do relative to YouTube more watchable. I'm currently trying to record this in 4K. I had it in HD in the last video. I'm not sure why I'd only uploaded in 720, but it is what it is. Until I'm able to manage some upgrades, it'll be what it is. Hopefully it's doable. I have written out sort of a timeline because I think there are elements of our first date, whether it's to do with me right before, the night before, or leading up to it, that are pretty funny. They kind of give a funny contextual reference for going into it. Maybe some of you can relate, maybe not. And then I'm going to go right into describing the best first date a guy could ask for. It was perfect. So here we go. This one, luckily, is going to be probably the fun one. When I think back and I need to get through a day, when I was going to say when some days are hard, but every day's hard. When it gets harder than normal, I find myself thinking of the beginning of our relationship really often. I mean, there's tons of great memories throughout, but I think about a lot of these first couple days and the first few weeks of getting to know each other. That if you could call it the honeymoon period, I guess. But I mean, we had a honeymoon period for almost 8 years, so very lucky in that regard. So anyway. I'm going to try to keep in chronological order with my notes here. And I'll just reference this to kind of keep everything on track. So, when Mariah first messaged me, I had recovered from my surgery. I was living in Fredericksburg and working for the local Parks and Rec in Stafford County. I found myself on a zero-turn mower, wasting as much time as I could. So thank you, Stafford County, for your tax money. I wasted every cent that I possibly could because I hated living there and I hated most of you people. And I get this little ding on my phone. I can see a little profile picture. Really cute girl, like I said, asking me about death metal. Now, this is a red flag. It shouldn't be, but at the time it was. Any of the girls I'd come in contact with that I was interested in or were interested in me or anything like that, it's very common with such a small audience compared to country, rock, or anything like that, that when someone says that they're into the same music you are, normally there's a couple follow-up questions. Like, I don't believe you. So, this message also, I should say, if anybody running dating apps or ever watch this shit, she was able to message me, if I remember correctly, without having to like each other's profile. We didn't have to interact with each other's pages at all. She was just able to send me a message because I never remembered seeing her on the app. And even further, oddly enough, I had a few of these kinds of apps while I was living in Richmond, but I ended up uninstalling or deleting most of them because I wasn't interested in pursuing a relationship actively or passively. This one's crept through. I forgot that I had it on my phone. Didn't even register. I had switched phones. Had transferred apps over. Didn't even realize I still had it. And thank God I did, because without it, I don't know that we'd have ever talked to each other. In that regard, I remember her first message very, very clearly. She said, "Hey, how are you?" And then followed that up immediately with, You're the only person on here that I've seen that likes the exact type of music and the same type of shit that I'm into." And of course, I read that and I was like, "Oh, wow." And I thought, "Hey, wait a minute. No one likes this type of music. I'm sort of dumb as far as my friend group goes for liking this type of music because nobody does. It's an acquired taste, very harshly acquired taste." Um, so I said, "Okay, I'm going to test her because I think she's bullshitting me for whatever reason. But she has no reason to lie to me. I think she's bullshitting." So I said, "Okay, sure." I don't remember exactly what was on my profile, but I had said something along the lines of, "I really love extreme music, like or heavy music, like Black Dahlia Murder, Aborted, Cannibal Corpse," and just listed off a few of the extreme bands I was listening to at the time. Wretched, I know, was on there. A few other ones. So she said, "Aborted is one of my favorite bands. I love Cannibal Corpse. Uh, Black Dahlia Murder is one of my favorite bands of all time. I listen to them every day." And I thought, there's no fucking way that a chick's listening to this. I don't believe it. I'd never come across, I think, even a single female that I'm aware of that listened to that in my friend group in Fredericksburg. And I didn't have too many friends in Richmond because I was working all the time. Not much of a social life. So this didn't this wasn't looking good as far as I was concerned. I thought she was just lying to me. Um, so I tested her. I said, "All right, Mrs. I Love Aborted." I guess it's a funny sentence. Um, with those bands, what are some of your favorite songs or your favorite albums? And I mean, within 10 seconds, too quick to have tried to Google them and continue the lie I was sure she was telling. Uh, these are my favorite songs. This is my favorite album from Aborted. This is my two favorite albums from Black Dahlia Murder, and here's why. And Cannibal Corpse is just everything they do is great. And I was like, it turns out this chick's pretty cool. So I'm immediately thrilled. So you passed the test. I don't know if it was that much criteria I gave her, but I was just stoked to talk to somebody about music. I love I love music in general, but I love heavy music. I love the intricacy, the composition of the music, the imagery of the lyrics, the fantastical elements of it, the darkness that kind of pervades that whole thing. If you haven't noticed already, I'm that kind of guy. I'm kind of obsessed with that shit. Um, and yeah, it took off. I mean, we didn't even we didn't get flirty with each other until, we had to talk about music for 2 weeks before we could even get to know each other. Um, and I mean, fast forwarding a little bit, a couple years later, when we had kind of had a chat about when we first met or first messaged anyway, she was saying that she was basically had given up on that app, but was on there just to find friends who might like the same kind of stuff. So her first messages to me were, she later told me, "I think this guy's really cute," but um, she was thinking the same thing. Like, there's no way I really actually like those bands and stuff. So she's in the same boat that I was, and I thought that was kind of funny. My friend, guitar player, and all around amazing person. Let's call him John, because that's his real name. Invited me down to his new apartment in Richmond. He was one of the dudes I was living with when I lived there. Like I said, he was my guitarist. The whole band lived together. Um, he invited me down to this new apartment that he got. Really sweet bachelor pad type of deal. Basically a loft with one side bedroom for him and a bathroom. It was on 3rd Street, and we both were a fan of 3rd Street because whenever we had the extra money, which was rare, to go out and have a banger or a bar crawl or something like that, 3rd Street was kind of where everything was in the middle. Because there were a couple great restaurants around there with really good alcohol. There were a couple good street vendors also with alcohol, and then there were a few bars that happened to sell alcohol. So it was an area we were both really familiar with and enjoyed walking around. So he texted me on a Wednesday or a Thursday and says, "Hey man, I'd really love for you to come down. I'm gonna buy, I think he said, a fifth or a half gallon of whiskey. We're gonna have a nice night, have a couple drinks. Burgers are on me. Let's go to Penny Lane's, an English pub in Richmond. We both enjoyed quite a bit. Burgers are on me. Let's make a night of it. I just want you to see my new place and what I've done with it. Um, and then if you don't have work tomorrow, that'd be awesome." And then so I didn't. Turns out I had volunteered to work and get some extra hours on that Sunday, but Friday night and Saturday I was free. So I decided to take a half day at my job on Friday, meet with my dad. He was working from home. We had lunch together, and I asked him, "Hey, man, is there anything that you need me to do over the weekend with the house or anything like that?" He goes, "No, I have a bunch of shit to do work wise. I'm gonna be working from home most of Saturday, and then Sunday I'm just gonna relax." I said, "Okay, cool." Well, I'm planning in that vein to go down to Richmond and hang with John uh, tonight, whatever it was. He said, "Okay." So drive down to Richmond, park my car on the street right in front of his place. Go to his walk up. He's like 2 floors up or something. He already has the handle of whiskey on the counter. We already have, I don't know. He already has the handle of whiskey on the counter. And give him a hug, say, "Hey, dude, what's up?" And that whole quiet night thing together where we just have a couple drinks and have dinner and then call it a night. That was out the window immediately. We started drinking heavily again immediately. Uh, and with that liquid whiskey courage, I decided to text this lady I've been texting. And with a little liquid courage from the whiskey, I decided to text this hot lady I've been texting. And I tell her, "Hey, I just want you to know, I know this is short notice, but I just so happen to be in Richmond tonight. I'm with a friend. He has to work early tomorrow, but I have nothing to do. And I figured you would find this information interesting." To which he responded something along the lines of, "Well, it sounds like it would be more convenient for you tomorrow than it would be if you were at your house to come by so that we could meet and go on a date." And I said, "That's just what I was thinking. I was hoping you were too." So we talk a little bit, we flirt a little bit. I tell her when my buddy's supposed to work. I think we set a time between 9:30 and 10 because I had to go the opposite way to drop my buddy off at work and then go back through downtown Richmond to Midlothian, so where she lived, about 45 minutes away from where he had to work. So now, this quiet night in that we had already started pounding drinks with turned into not only not a quiet night in, I wasn't just having fun and hanging out with a friend and going on what ended up being an insane bar crawl, but I was also celebrating the hot date that I got tomorrow. It's around dinner time. We decide to go to Penny Lane for burgers and alcohol. And I think it's 7 p.m. and I am too drunk for 7 p.m. already. And something, if you don't know, or if you, there's no reason that strangers would know this about me, but I have a fairly high tolerance for alcohol. Not something I'm proud of. I wish I was a cheap drunk, but I am not. And I'm already ripped. I'm happy about the next day. I'm happy to be spending this time with my friend. He's killing it. Just stoked. Just all around great night. First real good night that I've had in a while. And I just decide. I mean, I'm deciding things like I'm Irish. All of a sudden, I started speaking to people with an Irish accent, leaning on my old improv skills from high school. I'm specifically doing an Irish accent because we're at an English pub, and I think it's funny to talk shit to the English coming from an Irish perspective because I'm hammered, and I think that's just the right thing to do. I decide to adopt different accents throughout the night, and we end up at Third Street Bar or Kitchen, whatever. They may have closed down by now, I'm not sure, but we ended up at Third Street Bar. We got a couple things called blue motorcycles, which are just every alcohol with blue food coloring. Two of those gets a normal person hammered. I'm on number two after already an evening of drinking. John lets me know that there's a dude with a really cool car out front that we need to go see. I think it's a standard Cadillac, like RTX sedan or something like that. And John tells me, he's also ripped, tells me that this guy's going to take us to a cool bar. I was like, okay, we're already at a cool bar, but another cool bar sounds pretty cool. It's drunk thought. So I get in the back seat. He jumps in the passenger seat. This guy, we don't know this guy. Um, this guy, I'm pretty sure, is drunk, which I don't, you know, you should not drink and drive. But, I've also been eligible for DUI. In fact, I was eligible that night. Uh, I am instructed in the backseat of this car to grab two cables and connect the battery that is in the middle back seat so that he can start the car. I should also mention that throughout the night, I think at this point it's about 10 or 11 p.m. We did not know this, but the Richmond Marathon is the following morning starting at 4 a.m. They have already closed off most of the streets. Any of the cars that are on the streets before 3 a.m. will be towed to make way for the runners. And there are cops on almost every corner. 3rd Street, Main, to Belvedere and Broad, if you're familiar with all this, like a big circuit, like you'd expect. Cops on almost every corner, every other corner, probably. This dude is whipping drifts around through and around red lights like it's nothing. Luckily, cops in Richmond have more things to worry about, like murder, so they're not bothering us. We get to this place. I have no idea what it's called. We had to walk down, we had to walk through an alley and then down steps to get to it. I've never heard about this bar. I've never been to this bar again. We walk down these steps. Security guard takes our ID, and then we get in. This is like, it has a maybe 10 by 15 dance floor, a couple tables around it, a shitty bar, and there are maybe 15 people total in, and they're playing some fairly loud music that sucked. We get a table, we sit down, and we're greeted by a couple, not who people that own the bar, patrons of the bar, that come over and say, "Hey, if you guys have another $15, we can get cocaine." Like, all right. My buddy's like, "Hey, what do you think? I could maybe do some cocaine right now." I'm like, "We are not going to do cocaine with strangers. I'm personally not going to do cocaine, period, but I'm not going to let you do cocaine with strangers." Uh, I'm a buzzkill, I suppose. So I produce $15. The guy's very excited, and he goes away. And I said, "We're leaving. Finish your drink." We leave. We remember the whole marathon thing. We look at our. We remember the whole marathon thing, and remember we need to move our cars. Now, like I said, I'm parked on the street on 3rd Street in front of his building. He is parked in his reserved space across the street, and he believes he's fine. He doesn't need to move it because they wouldn't block a reserved space for the marathon. That made sense to us. But I for sure need to move my car. I'm getting towed. And as a matter of fact, as we were walking back to his place, we saw the tow truck taking cars off 3rd Street. So I'm met anyway, with a game time decision. Had a lot of fun tonight. I don't have a lot of money. I got a hot date tomorrow. Somebody has to move this car. I decided to move the car because I would rather get popped with a DUI on an empty road where I wouldn't have hurt anybody, in my mind. It's not true, but in my mind. Versus getting the car towed, having to deal with that in the morning, my friend missing work, and then me missing out on the date. Uh, that's not correct thinking. That's just what I thought. So I get behind the wheel of that Oldsmobile 95 Cutlass, blue plush interior, bench seats, and sign of the cross, and then gun it. I get this later from John. He's on the phone with his girlfriend at the time, and he's standing outside making sure that he can see me and figure out where I'm going. I think he originally told me that I could just take a right and then immediately park off of the laneways for the marathon, and I'd be fine. I immediately forgot that and started going up 2 blocks, taking a right, coming down 2 blocks, taking a right, coming up the same 2 blocks, taking that same right, coming down the same blocks. And John described it later to me as I was, and he was just, I'm the only car on the road, and he's describing it as he's like, this dude's gonna get a DUI for sure. He's gonna crash a car. I eventually, 2 streets over and to the left, relative to the one ways, I get in the plasma bank parking lot and I say, I'm done. I shouldn't be driving right now. If I get towed, I get towed. This is not safe. I gotta walk back. Lock up the car. I have to make the 2 block walk back down to Third at his apartment. I walk up Fifth, I think, and I'm planning on making a right where it intersects with, I forget the name of the road, but it leads to Third. And I'm approached by a very large man. This is 2:30, 3 a.m. No, couldn't have been. And this is 2 or 2:30 a.m. Who puts all of himself immediately in front of me and says, "Hey man, I could really use a couple bucks." And I said, "Shit." One thing I had done in Richmond, because I had had a couple altercations before, is I had what I describe, and I've heard described as mugger money. So I put a 20 in my sock, and just if I was walking around, I'd walk around with it. This guy says I could definitely use a couple bucks. I say shit, and hang on, I'm shit housed. By the way, otherwise, if I was sober, I would have probably put up more of an argument. I'm a fairly large dude, but who knows? So I said, hang on. I take a step back and I reach in my sock and I hand him the 20 and I said, dude, besides my ID, that's all I have. He's like, I appreciate it, man. And then he walked away. I was like, thank God. I would then begin to walk towards John. It is around 3-ish when we finally go to sleep. We have to be up at 7 so he can be at work at 8. Reminding you that I told Mariah that we would meet between 9:30 and 10. That's already kind of pushing it with how we have to get. And being that drunk, we forgot again that the marathon was the next day. And it just so happens at 7 o'clock, they're running right past us on 3rd Street. John cannot get his car out without hitting these people, which, we both probably wouldn't have minded, but it's frowned upon. So we have to walk over to my car. I have to take him to work, which is fine. I have the worst headache I've ever had in my life. My stomach is on fire, and I had smoked so many cigarettes that my lungs were probably 90% full of tar, as a guess. He was bumming too. I mean, he was a little bit better off than I was because I was a little stupid the night before. But uh, he also wanted me to add that when going over the story and asking him if I had forgotten any details, he wanted me to add that there's very few people in his mind that he could hang with in that capacity that would make it through the night. And he really appreciates, looking back on all this, that was both of our last wild nights out, which is it's pretty cool to have to share that with a buddy. Because for me, what ends up happening with Mariah makes it so that I calm down with that kind of nonsense almost completely, and he calms down just because he, after a couple bad nights, just decides alcohol is just not really for him, or at least it doesn't like him. So we wake up, we walk outside for a cigarette. We notice that there's a bunch of people wearing spandex running in front of us and think, shit, we can't get out of here, at least until this is over, we think. We walk over to where we cut through the marathon, by the way, across the street and get to my car. My car is not in the way of the marathon like I'd hoped. It's fine. I didn't get towed, no ticket, luckily. Hop in my car. He's got all his work stuff with him. And then proceed to sit in marathon diverted traffic for several hours. Um, during which I have a knife in my stomach that is telling me that I need to use the bathroom to the full extent of the facilities, worse than I have ever had to before or since, actually, and sitting there sweating. Like, it was November, I think, chilly, and I am sweating. It's horrible. And at one point, we're on Main Street near a 7-Eleven near Main and 4th, I believe. I can see all the way up Main to the VCU camp, at the beginning of the VCU campus, and uh, Belvedere, which is the main road to get uh, to either the Chamberlain or to Southside Bridge, which I would eventually have to go over later in the story. But we're not moving. It's just not happening. It's like DC traffic almost. It's that bad. John really needs a Gatorade, so he actually gets out of the car, spends maybe 8 minutes in total walking over to the 7-Eleven and then walking back to the car. I had moved 2 feet in 8 minutes. It's not looking good. So a couple of the times where I thought, surely this is going to move a bit, and it didn't, I would text Mariah and keep her updated with, hey, I haven't been able to drop off John yet, but I'm still coming. It's just going to be later than I originally planned, and I apologize for that. I am usually really punctual. I'm on time, especially for something like this. I hope this doesn't put you off. And she kept saying things like, oh, no, it's okay. It's okay. You know, I get it. By the way, years later, I would find out that she thought I was standing her up. So she's lying to me again. Um, I finally get out of this traffic and I get to the restaurant my buddy managed. I drop him off. I'm finally able to use the bathroom, or so I thought. I go in the bathroom. It's disgusting. Um, I already have a thing about I prefer to be at my place to use the bathroom, and I'm not able to. I puke a little bit, which helps kind of, but I'm not able to use the bathroom. So I still have this knife in my gut, and I'm going to have a date, which is insane. But I gotta get there. That's what I'm thinking. I let her know I dropped John off, and I'm coming as fast as I can. It's probably 11ish at this point. I pull up to her neighborhood at maybe 12:10. A sleepy neighborhood, very cute, off Midlothian. And I'm so excited for this date because I neglected to tell you before, when we were texting, we set up what we wanted to do. I said, hey, maybe it's going to be early in the morning. Could I grab you for a coffee? Take you out, just sit down and get to know each other in person at least, so you don't think I'm a psycho. To which she replied, I can't say no to coffee. And what do you think about this really cool cemetery that I know nearby? And I looked at that message and put down my phone and said, fuck, she's cool. Uh, and immediately replied, that sounds perfect. And it did. So that's what I'm looking forward to. Taking this metal gothy babe to a cemetery for a first date with some hot coffee in November. That's nothing beats that. So I pull up, I call her up and I say, hey, my map is kind of messing with me. I don't know. I'm outside, but I don't know if it's this house or whatever. And then she goes, oh, I'll come out so I can get you in the driveway. I said, okay, cool. She comes out, and dude, she's wearing a cute little like psychobilly style bandana, not at the front, like she's Tupac or some shit. has her hair in a ponytail, wearing a ripped up Black Dahlia Murder hoodie, tight jeans that are showing off everything great, and an aborted t-shirt. And I'm like, shitload of face piercings, tattoos everywhere. And I'm like, jackpot. And she's so sweet. So I get out of the car, I walk over to her. Uh, I put my hand out to shake her hand, and she just gives me a hug. And I'm like, sweet, we're doing okay so far. We've been talking for weeks and weeks at this point. I mean, and when I stressed that we had an awesome connection, I mean, it wasn't the newness of a relationship where you feel compelled to text every minute of the day. Um, it was much more, we were both so interested in what we had to say that we just couldn't get enough of talking to each other, which was like I've personally never had that, and she would later tell me that she never had that either. Which so that's a nice thing to share, and I'm hopeful that that can be relatable to some degree to some people, especially our people my age, our age. In any case, I go inside and I meet her mom for the first time, and we kind of chit chat, get to know each other. You know, hey, this is the dude that's taking my daughter out. Um, to give you an idea, I am always hovering between 250 and 260. I'm about 6 foot or 6'1". Mariah was 5'6", maybe a little taller. And at that time, she was like 112 pounds soaking wet. I could break her in half if I wanted to. She's a little stick. Um, and the juxtaposition of like a picture of us like compared to each other is ridiculous. Most of them are because she's always been tiny. Um, and I remember as we were getting ready to go uh, and leave the house, she'd be riding with me, and her mom, this very southern lady from Winston-Salem, North Carolina, said, "You seem really sweet, but just please promise me, the internet being the internet, please promise me that you won't cut my daughter up into little pieces." And I said, "Well, let's see if she behaves. We'll see. See how the night goes." And I heard Mariah laughing at that, and we knew we had dark senses of humor before that, but I knew she was just as much of a little psycho that I was, and that was incredibly endearing in that moment, and it just made me excited. Um, in any case, we jump in the car. I go get us some coffee at Sheets, unfortunately, instead of Wawa. Nothing against Sheets, but Wawa's a lot better. And I let her direct me to where this cool cemetery she knows about, not knowing that she's terrible at giving directions. So we got lost twice because she didn't know what the hell she was talking about. And then she gets me onto a toll road in Richmond, and I have no change. I have no cash because I have a card for everything for the most part, and I never take toll roads. I also don't have an easy pass. So I get to this checkpoint where you're supposed to pay the toll, and this lady says, "Hey, it's going to be 65 cents." I said, "Ma'am, I don't have that." She goes, "Are you kidding me?" So I got judged on top of that, which didn't feel good. Mariah's laughing the whole fucking time. And I was like, "Listen, if this is the way that you remember going, I don't know if this is going to work out." Like, I think there's something else going on where she not only was trying to look it up on her phone for the maps aspect of it, but she also found out they were closed that day, and she hadn't checked that. Um, so she goes, "Are we able to go back to my place?" And I say, "Yeah, we could do that. We can get off at this exit and just turn around. I can put your place back in the maps, and we can hang there if you want." She goes, "No, no. Um, there's a cemetery attached to the church that's across the street from our neighborhood. Did you see that when you came in?" I said, "No, I think I came in the back way." So we decided to go do that. We still had plenty of coffee because this was in the span of like 10 minutes that she dicked up the trip. And we ended up going and having a great, amazing time at the cemetery near the church. We walked around the cemetery for a little bit. She kept fucking knocking my hand. We were walking next to each other, so I just grabbed it and I said, "Hey, behave." And she smiled and laughed at that. And she goes, "Hey, just so you know, there's like a really pretty, uh, like they do like plays out there in the woods." She was referencing the woods that were just behind this church and the cemetery, but still part of that property. She said there's like a wooden stage back there that's kind of small, but they used to put on like performances and stuff. And then right behind that, there's a really pretty pond, and it's real quiet back there. And I said, "Okay, do you want to go back there?" She goes, "Yeah, I'd like to." Because during the whole time we were walking around the cemetery, we were kind of just enjoying the whole macabre element of it, but also making fun of some of the funnier names of people there. Like I remember there being a dude with the last name of Buttman, which we got a kick out of. So we walk back into these woods on the property, and almost perfectly, there were two unused concrete sewer pipes about 22 inches 22 inches wide that were just sat next to each other on the ground right in front of the pond. So we sat there and we just looked at the water for a little bit. And we were just talking, having fun. It's really chilly out. She's putting on a little bit of theater, shivering and shit. So I throw my arm around her and she just whispers, "Yes," and just kind of snuggles up to me and I start laughing. She's already making me deal with this bullshit, putting on theatrics. And again, we just sit there and laugh and talk, and it's it's incredible, the amount that we had in common. I don't think you need to intrinsically click on absolutely everything in a relationship, but with it's not, oh, but I'm different at all. It's just that I like so much, to me, from how I grew up, so much weird shit. She had experienced the same thing, that it was just it was a novelty, to both of us individually, to click so hard on everything that we were interested in, and that helped. Having There was never anything that we couldn't talk about. There was never anything because of our shared interest, or it turned out a whole bunch of our personal beliefs about things. There's We never ran out of shit to talk about, and I think that was a huge thing for both of us. Because I think when you enter a relationship, if it's the type you enter where you're like, okay, I want this to be a long thing, if you've thought about that, or if it comes up as quick as it did for us, um, I don't think you should ever be with somebody who you can't fucking talk to. Because what are you doing? You, you can't just enjoy each other's physical self all the time. Well, I guess some people do, but that usually doesn't end well. I mean, it doesn't end fulfilling as far as I'm aware. It can be filling, but not fulfilling. It's dumb. Um, so we sat there a few hours. It started to get really cold, and I said, "Hey, uh, my brights don't work on my car, so I probably have to take off soon before it gets too dark." Um, and she said, "Oh, okay." Well, she goes, "This was really really fun." And I said, "I think so too." And she goes, "I'm gonna let my mom know you're gonna drop me off here soon." I said, "Okay, sounds good." She looks at her phone, and her mom had invited me to have dinner with them. So I said, "Yeah, I still don't have anything to do, but I also don't want this to end, and I don't care about driving home in the dark." Um, so I go and have dinner with them, and it reminded me all at once of having dinner with my family, having dinner with um, my extended family in Michigan, which meant a lot to me, which I wasn't able to do very much at that point in my life, just being so busy and things like that. Um, it just felt absolutely natural. Um, Her mom and I clicked really quickly, and if you have to pick, I would prefer, or I think people in general would prefer, that the parents of your significant other enjoy your company, or at least tolerate your company. And her mom and I clicked pretty quickly. It was We had fun talking and just chatting, chewing fat. Um, and the rest of the night, uh, and the rest of the night was spent Her mom went to bed at the time. She was working very early, so she went to bed fairly early, and uh, we spent the rest of the night. She turned on. We got on the couch and laid down together, just being flirty and watching "It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia," a show that we hadn't talked about yet, but it turned out both of us were obsessed with at the time. We both were really into it. She was rewatching it for like the third time, and I was watching it the second time or something like that. So I mean, I think we left that on. We were up all night together, and we left that show on, and would pause in between being flirty and uh, dicking around, and we just start laughing at the darkest shit they'd say on that show. And that was incredibly endearing. Um, and at one point, uh, we stepped out to smoke a cigarette, and I happened to be leaning in such a way that our faces were close. So I just decided, one, two, three, go. And I kissed her. And after I did, she just went, yes, again. And that was great. And I think I probably knew right there, if I'm honest, that this was something that I wanted to absolutely pursue and continue. That she was something I wanted to pursue and continue. So I have to get up the next morning, Sunday, and I have to be at work in Fredericksburg, about 70 miles away, or about an hour, and be at work at 9 o'clock. She and I, while dicking around, both did not want to be too forward and did not sleep together in the metaphorical sense, but we did sleep together. She fell asleep on top of me on the couch. So it was very easy to wake her up and say bye and plan for the next time, which would end up being the next weekend. Um, but I was already fucking obsessed with her. And I'm so enthusiastic about the night before and just about this newfound sense of what if and happiness and this connection that I've never had before, that she'd communicated to me that she'd never had before. Um, I'm so excited by that as I'm leaving her neighborhood, I nail a fucking speed bump so hard that it ended up hitting it hit my the back end of my chassis so hard that I was like, I'm surprised I didn't pop a tire on that one. But I've got no time. I've got to get to work. I'm an hour away, and I'm going to be an hour late already. And that's if I don't stop or do anything. Listening to the new Cannibal Corpse album on the way up to work or back to Fredericksburg. The album at the time was A Skeletal Domain, and this is around the time I was still playing drums. I knew all the drums to that song, and when I drive, I kind of tap the drums out. Uh, and I only say that to say that I heard this very weird clinking around, this metallic sort of tin 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 tin. And I'm like, that doesn't sound like a cymbal. And I know as far as drums, every note to this song. It was one of my favorite ones on the album. And I can tell you where in the song it was that I heard this shit. I was like, that sounds super weird. Maybe that speed bump got me worse than I thought. So I pull into the Fast Mart or Valero, whatever it was, right off the South Side Bridge of Richmond. It's 8:20 in the morning, and there's a dude with a rattle can truck, uh, camo, and he's in camo in the driver's seat. His window down, he's eating a biscuit and having a Swisher Sweet. He and I are the only two in the parking lot. And I pull in, and I have my windows down because I was smoking and listening to music. And he just looks at me. He goes, "Hey man," and I said, "Hey, what's up?" He goes, "Hey man, your fucking muffler's broken." I was like, "Really?" He goes, "That sucks." And then he puts his truck in reverse and leaves. So sure enough, I get out and I walk around the back of my car, and my muffler's only being held on by uh, the the attachments on the side that keep it from ripping off or keeping the back end of it from dropping. The Where it connects to the actual exhaust is completely snapped. And so I disconnect the things. I'm like, I don't have time for this. Throw it in the trunk. It ended up being there for another 8 months. Uh, and all of a sudden, my V6 sounds like a V6. That's pretty cool. So no harm done, as far as I know. Just driving up the road, just speeding, crazy, being stupid. Get to work. It's 9:45. That shouldn't have happened. I should have been at work at like 10:20, 10:30. I get to work. I'm all worried about getting written up or something like that to be late. And nope, no one's there. Just me. I gotta cut the grass. Same old day. And all I can think about is getting back to Mariah that weekend. And it would turn out the following weekend uh, that I would end up introducing her to my dad and my sisters, and my stepmom actually was up that weekend too. Um, and from there, it was just it's incredible. That was the foundation for us, and we talked about it all the time. We'd look back on it. That meant so much to us that when we eventually got married in Vegas, um, the theme of the wedding was cemetery, and we fucking loved it. So I tell you all that to tell you this. Before she had sent me that message, I was at a point where I had finally figured out some tools in myself, in my own head, to deal with the sense of not wanting to wake up in the morning that I talked about in the first video in part one. And I was actively working on myself and wasn't worried about pursuing a relationship, like I said before. And then all of a sudden, what ended up being a relationship just falls in my lap out of nowhere. I couldn't be more grateful for that now, knowing what I know. But I think the lesson there is there's a lot to speak for when you dedicate your time to, even though you could be wrong in the moment about how you go about it, focusing on making yourself the best version of you that you can be. Um, I decided that even if I woke up every single day not wanting to be here, I could still, because I ended up being here, regardless of what I feel about that, I can still try to be the best friend that I can be, the best brother that I can be, the best husband, the best son, uh, the best influence to things around me and people around me. And I don't think that if you commit to that, that there's anything to be held accountable for in a negative sense. I think that you can evolve and progress your life in amazing ways because of that. Because as you'll find out later in the story, I mean, it took a couple years, honestly, of me trying to work through that shit. And there were huge mountain peaks and huge, deep valleys of negativity, even while trying to work on that. But I ended up focusing on the peaks and Mariah too. Because again, from that moment, we were together for almost 9 years. And we suffered and had victories, every one of them together. And we chose to focus on the victories. And that led us to every, the getting to the beginning of everything we talked about and everything we wanted. And to me, that's not nothing. That's amazing because I have social confidence in myself. I'm typically confident in being able to hang around anybody, make friends with anybody, laugh, talk, whatever. But I didn't have a whole lot of personal confidence in my ability to live a good life, live a productive life, or depending on how you define successful life. Um, and she, in a huge part, was um, a guiding light for me and helping helping me, among many other things, accepting that I could be that for myself and for her and for others if it came up. And like I said before, I don't think you have to connect completely with people to make a deeply, deeply held impact on them in a positive way. But it takes effort. And if you're not willing to put in the effort to make that kind of impact to those around you, what you'll inevitably do is have an indifferent impact, which can affect people sometimes more negatively than an outright negative one, because at least then they can justify you having a bad day or going through a bad part of life, or doing just that, being the kind of person that no one wants to be around because you're always fucking negative, you know, um, whether it's directly to yourself or to the people that surround you that are there because they care about you and you're just pushing them away. Kind of going off on a tangent here, but there's so many things that I learned from our relationship, and so many things that I just as an observer, like I don't know, certainly don't know everything, and I do a lot of shit wrong. But I see so many mistakes that are to me so easy to not make. Um, so many things that you could just mildly give a shit about, just a little bit of a shit about, and your life would be better, to your definition, not just an objective one or an opposite subjective one. Um, you can put a mild amount of effort in uh, and change areas of your life to a degree that you can achieve your own mountaintops or your own goals, to get it out of the metaphor. The last thing that I'll say to wrap up this first date of ours is a couple weeks later, we were laying in bed at her house, and we both found ourselves, because we had to wait all week. It just wasn't, just life wasn't fair that we had to wait all week to see each other back then. That when we got together, we were so excited about that prospect that we couldn't sleep. We were so excited to be together that we couldn't sleep. So there we are laying in bed. She's tucked here in me. Um, and she says, "Yeah, I've been thinking." And I said, "What's dangerous? What are you thinking about?" She goes, "You've been coming down and hanging out with me for the last, must have been 5, 6 weeks, every weekend." She goes, "You still planning on doing that?" I was like, "Yeah, every weekend that I can, that I don't have to work, I'll be here, or you'll be up with me." She goes, "I feel like that would technically make you my boyfriend." I said, "It's a valid argument. I mean, to a lot of people, I assume it would be." She goes, "Well, I don't really mind a lot of people. What do you think?" I said, "I kind of have to agree. I would agree that that would arguably make me your boyfriend." And she said, "I'm pretty stoked about that." I said, "I am too. Um, I just want to let you know that I don't know about you, but I've not been seeing anybody else, and I'm not interested in seeing anybody else. Besides you, I'm not interested in a relationship with anybody. You're essentially the exception to the rule that I had in my head, and it's a huge surprise to me." And she said, "I'm not seeing anybody else, and I don't want to see anybody else." I said, "So that, if we want to take it 50 style, would be going steady, like the kids say." And she said, "I'm pretty stoked about that." And I said, "Me too." So if I can add another piece of advice, if you're at a point in a relationship with your significant, who ends up being your significant other, having open conversation about where you're at is so goddamn important. I mean, that conversation set the tone. Uh, there, we had no trust issues. I mean, because we both knew where we were at. We would go back to that kind of conversation with more jokes or less jokes. Sometimes it was more serious, and we'd say, "Hey, where you at with this? I just want to check in," um, and be that person that you deserve to ask you and expect an honest answer, and be grown up enough to talk about your honest reply. Should it not be something that I'm either expecting or okay with? So that's another happy memory because I'm happy about how it ended. I'm happy about how that interaction ended. It was pretty cool. And at that moment, she was the only person in my life that I felt like I could talk to like that. And that was amazing to me. And she felt the same way, which was also amazing to me because I'm sometimes kind of difficult to, I think, speak with because I go off on tangents. I digress quite a bit. The way I communicate is a little archaic compared to peers of mine, but that's, I think, stemming from damage that I've done to myself, making an inability to communicate a priority rather than figuring my own shit out and then just communicating with people. But she dug it. I don't know why, but she dug it, and that was awesome. So I know I kind of went off on a couple different yarns there. Uh, I do hope I can use the word enjoy with this one. I do hope you enjoyed this one. Like I said, I look back on these memories all the time. This period of our relationship was just, I mean, it was as close to, if you could call it like movie shit to both of us. You know, it felt like whenever I was at her place or whenever she was up at dad's, and we were the only two people in the world. And I mean that. I don't mean um, just the metaphorical sense, like, oh, this is how much we like each other. We felt like it was just us in the world. It was our prime directive to just be with each other and evolve our relationship. And it's what we did anyway. But like, it's because I have never felt that before. It is so hard for me to describe how amazing that was to me. Um, because I'm fairly realistic about day to day life shit. I'm fairly realistic about, oh, this Saturday with you is very nice, but like I gotta go to work tomorrow. I was like, I wasn't even thinking about that. Um, it's incredible. I hope you enjoyed that kind of jaunt through all kinds of different shit. Um, the next one will be uh, endearing as well, I think. There's a couple aspects of heavy, maybe, but yeah, thank you for continuing to walk along with me on this one. As we get closer and closer to the heavier episodes, um, I'll be keeping in mind how much I'm enjoying sharing this with you. So, thank you for coming with me and helping me with the ability to do that. It's very meaningful to me. Bye for now.